Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Audio Stew. We have officially hit episode 10, so we are now double digits. That's pretty awesome. I love doing this show, and I'm glad that, we're starting to build up a little bit of a library of episodes, so I think that's pretty cool. Today's episode will also be a nice change of pace. I've been putting out a lot of really long episodes recently, and so this one is only going to be a little bit over an hour, so it's not near as extensive as some of the past episodes. So if you haven't ever listened before, this is probably a good one to hop on board and kind of check out what this show's about. Anywho, today's guest is Hallie Strong. She is a former classmate of mine. We graduated from the same high school, and after graduation, she decided to go to Spurgeon College in Kansas City to participate in the fusion program there. That's for missionary and discipleship training. I really wanted to have her on just because I know she has a lot of cool stories and things that she's learned that I personally wanted to hear about. But I also figured it'd be a really neat thing to share with you guys. So with that, let's jump right in. Hey guys, what's up? Kurt here. We are back for another new episode. I don't really have a lot of an intro, I guess, to this, so I think we're just going to get rolling. Today's guest is a former classmate of mine, Hallie Strong. Say hi, Hallie.
Hello.
Nice. So I brought Hallie on because she is interested in the mission field, and I think that's a really neat topic to discuss, and sort of all the different training and stuff that she's done. But before we get into all that, we need to build up some credibility here, Hallie. So uh, first of all, let's just get like a brief intro from you. I mean, obviously we already know your name, but like, how old are you? Where are you from? What are you up to these days? Any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm from Central City, Nebraska. I'm 19 years old. Currently, I am working at Subway and I'm taking a few summer classes and preparing to be an intern next year for the fusion process.
Awesome. Um, fun fact. What is your favorite movie?
The Prestige.
Oh, nice. I love that movie. That's a great movie.
Yes.
What's the best part of The Prestige? Why is it so
Uh,
good?
the end when all of the plot twists are revealed.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
my brain's still hurting from that one.
I know.
I've only seen it once, but it was really good.
Yeah.
I I watched Inception the other day, which is another really good Christopher Nolan film, and I was like, man, this guy makes some good movies.
Yes.
Um, but we're not here to talk about movies. That was just to warm up, I guess. We're here to talk about the mission field. Um, so I want to know where did this desire to serve overseas come from? Well, even like, do you want to do specifically overseas, or like, is it just you just want to be a missionary anywhere? What's the deal? Where'd it come from? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, so originally, I was absolutely for 100% sure that I wanted to go overseas. And it kind of came from, if you've ever read Radical by David Platt, it's a really good book.
I haven't read it, but I know of it, and I've studied parts of it.
Yes, it's really good. So I think it was sophomore year or something like that that I read that. And then kind of the Lord started working in my heart and being like, that's what I want to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was pretty sure I wanted to do. And then as senior year came, yeah, for most of my all of high school, I was pretty sure that I wanted to be overseas. Now it's kind of different. I don't really care where I'm at. I just want to live life on mission.
Mm, I see. So was that so even like when you were younger and stuff, did you ever have like a desire to do that, or was it mostly in high school?
Not really when I was young. I didn't have a ton of exposure to like missionaries and what they do when I was really little. I mean, a little bit, but that wasn't on my radar at all.
Hmm. That's interesting because I know, like, I'm trying to remember, like, some of my siblings I remember were like, when they were 6, they're like, I want to grow up and be a missionary and stuff. But that's not exactly the case for you then.
No, not at all.
Was there anything else other than that radical book that like you read or you saw, or like other things that kind of inspired you?
I think also just having the international program at our school and like becoming really good friends with a lot of them helped that a lot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. From there, you have this desire, right, where you want to go into missions, but what's the what's the actual plan from there when you graduate high school? How did you wind up at it's Spurgeon College, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's called the Fusion program.
Yes.
Okay, so how did you come across this Fusion program and decide that's where you need to be? I guess.
So, halfway through my senior year, our church went to a conference called the Ready Conference at the school because we had recently gotten a new pastor about a year before who knew about the school and stuff. So we went to this youth conference and it was really good. I really loved like the speakers were really good, and then there was this thing for seniors where you could get free Chick-fil-A if you go and tour the college. And so I was like
Ooh,
telling one of my friends, I was like, the only reason I'm doing this is for the Chick-fil-A. I'm not coming here.
Chick-fil-A is worth it, man. They got you
Yes,
hard. Hard sold on that.
exactly. But so I went through it, literally wasn't interested at all. Um,
Hmm.
and then afterwards, we were all, they did like a scavenger hunt thing, and we all congregated back, and they said that they had this scholarship, and if you applied, you could get full tuition.
Oh.
It wasn't until a few weeks later, I got home and I was like thinking about it. I had seen like the conference did a promo about fusion and stuff, and I'd seen it and thought it was interested, but I was like, nah, I'm not going there.
Hmm.
But a few weeks later, I was kind of like thinking about it a lot. And so I decided to look at it and look it up more. And then my mom urged me to at least just apply for the scholarship and see where it got me from there because it was a really expensive school.
Yeah, yeah.
I ended up doing that and I got the scholarship and then I was looking into fusion more and I thought it was really interesting. So I ended up just applying off like I wasn't really even thinking that much about it. But yeah, it was all kind of really fast.
So, I mean, how did you go from that not really thinking about it and like, okay, now I'm kind of interested, to that final decision of I should actually go here?
I think honestly, my motives in going there in the first place probably weren't correct. I mean, they weren't correct.
Okay.
But I think it was more just because it was something different. It sounded kind of cool. I wanted to go overseas, so it just sounded like a way to go there. I don't know. I just don't think that perfectly my motives were correct, but I just decided to go because it sounded cool.
Hmm. I mean, that's a good start at least.
Yeah.
Probably not the ultimate reason for going, but like,
No.
at least it was cool. That's something.
Yeah.
Um so what actually is the fusion program though? Like what's the purpose to it? How does it work and all that jazz?
Okay, so their mission statement thing, I'm not going to repeat it exactly because I don't remember it exactly, but it's like to raise up biblical men and women for a lifetime of discipleship for God's glory. So it's not even necessarily about missions, which is why I kind of went to it partly. It's more even just about discipleship and learning how to be a disciple. So they use like a training process So there was 4 different trainings that we used, and then like life on life discipleship, living with a team, and all of that, like in Bible classes and all of that to just grow us and make us biblical adults. There's people that go there to because they want to be missionaries, and then there's some that just go because they want a year of growth and to be discipled.
Okay. So are there like different aspects of the program? Like, I don't know, like classes or something like that? Like, if you're like dead set on, no, I want to be here for missions versus I want to be here for discipleship, or is it the same program either way?
It's the same basically. I mean, because you take the same classes, and all of those classes go towards an intercultural degree. But
Oh, okay.
sometimes a lot of people, if you I know some of the guys there wanted to be like pastors or just work in ministry, but not necessarily overseas. So like those classes would help get a Bible degree in whatever they were going to. So
I see.
yeah.
So you're taking a lot of classes, like just normal college and stuff,
Hmm.
or at least like Bible college or whatever. Um, but then there's a whole like training aspect also. How does that all work? Like, I mean, not like just training in the classroom, but I remember you telling all these stories of like doing stuff outside or jazz or what's the story behind that?
Yeah. So the first 2 weeks we had like our first training ground school, and so we took normally, so this was a new year, like they did everything completely different. It was kind of a guinea pig year. Usually you take classes for half, like 1 semester, and then you go overseas the second semester. This was the first year we stayed on campus all year, and we're planning to go overseas in the summer. So that
Okay.
was new. But because of that, ground school didn't start before the school year started like it normally does. Like you usually come in 2 weeks early. It started when classes started, which made classes very hard. But so we had classes during ground school, but that most of the other trainings happened over a weekend or fall reading days and spring reading days.
Oh, okay, okay. So other than that initial first week, you have a balance of like I'm doing homework on these days and I'm doing like specific training for stuff on these other days.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know you mentioned that you can't give away a whole bunch of stuff. Is there what exactly, I mean not exactly, but what like in general is ground school, I guess?
So it's 2 weeks of like almost military-ish type of training. It's a lot of their goal is to remove entitlements in you to make you question whether it's worth it or not. They want to
Okay.
So they send us to really hard places overseas. So they send us to either places that the government doesn't want us there, or they're hard to get to physically, or like just people are really hostile towards the gospel. So they want us prepared and don't want us to have to ask that question overseas. So they do
Hmm.
that kind of through ground school.
Okay. Gotcha. And that that type of training for like difficult stuff, does that continue throughout the year also, or is it pretty much all in that just first 2 weeks?
Um, we have like a physical training 3 days a week in the morning at 6:30, but it was more just like a PE class, a little bit more of an intense PE class. But
I see.
yeah.
What's like a typical day in the life of, I don't know, I don't want to say quite like a college student because I feel like most people know what that's like, but I guess maybe both ways, like a typical day of like what you did at college and then like a typical day of like on the uh like I don't know what to call it, like the training days, the ones where you're not doing homework.
Yeah, so on regular days that we're not training, we would just it'd pretty much be a lot of times, like I said, we would have physical training, PT in the mornings, and then we would go to classes throughout the day, but we'd also have like cohort times. My team that I was assigned to, we live together. It's like 2 rooms, and there's 5 girls that live together, plus my intern who didn't live with us.
Okay.
But So a lot of times we would have cohort time together and we just go through the word and pray and sing together. And we'd also have evangelism days, like 2 or 3 days a week, where we would go out to this apartment complex in like the bad section of Kansas City where we would talk to people and try to share the gospel with them and disciple new believers.
Hmm. Okay. And you said are those the days where you're not doing homework?
No, those would be days that I'm doing homework. That's just
Oh, okay. So it's just I think I'm still trying to a little bit understand how it works, but like it's just a mix of I'm doing homework while also doing all these things. Is that more accurate or
yes, yeah. Like they call the big trainings um are things we had training Fridays. So Fridays we had no technical class. We had a Fridays were dedicated to training. Whether that be Bible or like first aid and survival or any like there's a whole bunch of things. But and then most days it was more just classes and just being in the word and sharing the gospel.
okay. So I think I'm getting a little bit better picture here. So a couple days are specifically just training, but
hmm
most of the time you're doing a bit of both every day.
Yeah, pretty much the biggest times were ground school, and then over fall and spring reading days, we had a security training and a transportation training, and then one weekend we had a first aid and survival training.
Okay. What all like skills do you know now like from that? Can you like, if I don't know, broke my leg, can you make a splint or something like that or what all can you do now?
Yes, we learned a lot of that. It's more like so a lot of the places that people are going are kind of in the middle of nowhere, so we had to learn a lot of just basic stuff for if we are out in the middle. So teams have actually had to use the stuff they learned before, but then so every tried Friday first semester was dedicated to learning either first aid things like you said, putting a splint on or stopping blood or I don't, everything and anything. Or it was about like surviving. So we learned how to build shelters in the woods. Usually the first half of the day we would do first aid indoors and we'd do like role play, so we'd have to practice. And then
Hmm.
the second half we would go outside and learn. We had a period of time where we had to make a fire like every day for a week. Or yeah, we made shelters and things like that.
Like to like you made the fire and we called it good for the day, or like you had to cook on the fire or something, or
It kind of
just
depended.
like a check the box like, okay, I made my fire today. Like,
We did do that for a while. Usually on Fridays, the like trainings, we would do something with that. So we'd either cook or do something with a fire. But throughout the week, there was one week where we had the assignment because they wanted us to get good at making fires. So we'd have to go out and make a fire every day and take a picture of
nice.
it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Is that from like is that the whole like you gotta like whittle the sticks together and stuff? Or I never did Boy Scouts. I don't know anything.
No, they kind of believe that like they would give us they would let us bring our we had a backpack that we carried around everywhere. It was we had uniforms. There's a lot of extra rules in fusion, and one of them
Okay.
was uniforms. And there's an outdoor uniform and an indoor uniform. So we had to bring our backpack, and whatever we put in there, we could use to make our fire. So we had it pretty nice.
So what, you just brought a lighter with you every time and then called it good?
Pretty much. Usually we had cigarette lighters and cotton balls with Vaseline is usually what we did.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But it got really hard in the rain when we tried to do it.
I mean, yeah, yeah, that's understandable. So not like quite the whole, Bear Grylls Man versus Wild type thing, but maybe close to that where you could have your own reality TV show of surviving in the woods kind of.
Yes. So at the very end, after we had a transportation training, and then a few weeks later, they had a fast training, is what it's called. It's called First Aid and Survival. It was like our final. And
Mhm.
I actually didn't get to go on it. I had pneumonia but it was almost done, but they still made me stay and I was really sad. But they went on a hike where they hiked like 40 miles through the middle of nowhere and they had to use
Oh,
GPS map thing, like really old school, and like hike through and camp out and use their survival skills. And then they'd go to places where there would be interns role playing and they would, some of them had like fake blood and you'd have to like fix whatever was wrong with them. You'd have to assess it and figure out what was wrong and then fix it.
so basically, if I ever want to go hiking, like I need to have you tag along so that way I don't die or something.
I guess, but I wasn't actually at the fast, so
I mean, but you still learned all the skills along the way.
that's
So
true.
you know,
That's
even if even that could be your real first test when we go hiking and I fall off a cliff. Then okay, Hallie, don't let me die.
oh my word.
um, yeah, that's all really cool and stuff. Was it like going in like was all that jazz like what was that what you were expecting it to be or was it like way different than what you were expecting or
So in that particular, I kind of did expect it somewhat. Um, but if you're talking like ground school, the first few days, I thought it was going to be a happy go lucky, everyone's cheering you on kind of fun
mm-hmm.
experience. And that's not at all what it was. And I
Oof.
like that was totally the opposite. But most of it kind of sorta was what I expected, but not completely.
So I mean can you like I'm just talking overall like the whole program
Hmm.
like can you think of one expectation you had and then it turned out to be different or something like that
Yeah. Um, I think honestly the biggest one was ground school.
okay
Like the first day I got there and they started like I don't know, I just did not expect it. They're all like super the first day was super friendly. We're all moving in and then ground school hit and I was not expecting it to be so military like, I guess.
okay gotcha
Yeah.
okay moving what actually hold up one other thing I didn't you and like a roommate go on some like adventure road trip thing or something? Or am I completely
That would be probably transportation training. So I didn't
okay?
really talk about the other two much, the two big ones. But transportation was by far my favorite training. It was like, have you ever seen The Amazing Race? It's similar to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we all got um, an envelope, and then we were like just followed the envelope to where we were gonna go. So the first night we ended up in a train station, and we thought we were gonna go on a train. Didn't happen. We ended up staying at someone in Kansas City's house, and then we yeah, just went kind of across the country. Every team went to a different place. So mine went to North Carolina and Virginia, and then we all met up in Chicago. Every year the teams meet up somewhere, and they practice their language that they've been learning and sharing the gospel. So we were in Little India in Chicago for a few days, learning to use our language and share the gospel.
Hmm, that's cool. Okay, wait. So you said first off, so for as far as transportation, like, are you just driving to all these different locations then, or like how does so like you get an envelope, you find out where you need to go, drive there, hope you're right. Is that kind of like or
No, we used so the point of it is overseas you use a lot of different types of transportation, so it's learning to use that more. So we didn't have a car at all. So we either
okay?
had to they sent in past years they've sent people places without necessarily having somewhere to stay. So they have to either there's actually this year they did it for the guys teams too. So there were some guys teams that slept in McDonald's or in bushes. But um we all the girls teams just for safety wise they had places for us to stay and people that worked with um, them that were keeping us so we would get an envelope And so we used train, plane, bus, like literally everything. We walked a lot. We didn't have a car the whole time.
Hmm.
So
And you went from Kansas City to like East Coast and back to Chicago, so kind of all over the place a little bit.
yeah. The worst part about it was we took a bus from I can't remember if it was North Carolina or Virginia, one of them, to all the way to Chicago. So it was like a 24 or 25 hour.
Uh,
It was
uh,
awful. Sitting
that
next to
sounds
strangers.
terrible. Ugh, ugh.
And they're not pleasant bus rides either. But
That's oh man, 24 hours on a bus. That's terrible.
yeah, it wasn't very fun. But
But overall, you like the experience.
yes, it was my favorite training.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, wait. So I need to make sure that we cover all these bases because I'm a little. I feel like I'm jumping over the place before finishing up. So you've done first aid training, you've done transportation training, you had your ground school thing. What else? You had like evangelism
Hmm.
stuff that you did on a like a regular basis.
Hmm.
Um, was there any other kind of trainings that I'm already forgetting, or was that it?
The last one we did was security training.
Okay, that's right. You mentioned that earlier. So, what is security training, or can you even talk about that one?
I can give a vague definition of what it is, but
Okay.
pretty much it's similar to ground school as in it's questioning is it worth it, but it's more like is my life worth it? So because we're going to
Mm,
hard places, it was 7 days, and we spent some time in the classroom going through just how to live in these areas. I'm trying to think of how I can say it without. But pretty much we did a role play scenarios where we were in a situation, putting us in hard situations to question like what we would do in those situations and whether our life
hmm
was worth the gospel.
Hmm.
So
Okay. I think that works for a vague description. In case anybody actually wants to be check out this program. There's some some I don't know, privacy restrictions where you're not supposed to know beforehand what you're getting into,
yes,
which kind of
yes.
sounds a little terrifying, but that's it's fine.
It's the if you know everything that's happening, it doesn't produce quite the same effect, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. Um, okay, so I think we've covered all the trainings
Yes.
now that I've backtracked like 3 times. Um, Now we're gonna go into the favorites, or not
Okay.
necessarily the favorites, but we're gonna talk about some memories. What would you say is the hardest thing you had to do in your training? I don't remember. I think you mentioned you got pneumonia once, so I mean that's not that's not fun. But I'm assuming that probably was not the hardest thing you had to do. I don't know.
No, that was yeah, that was difficult, but it probably wasn't the hardest. um, Honestly, there's multiple things that I could say. I think probably the biggest one, the first few days of ground school. I specifically remember one moment, literally the third day I was there. We were going into chapel. We were in chapel,
Hmm.
and I'm not a public crier, okay?
Hmm.
But we were singing this song, and I don't even remember what it was, but I was literally like, I don't know why I'm here. Lord, why did you bring me here? I don't understand this. This is awful. Why would you put me in this? What is the point? And I wanted to quit so badly, but I didn't, and it was worth it. But I think that moment was probably the hardest, one of the hardest.
Hmm. That's really interesting. I mean, That makes a lot of sense. Like, it'd be one thing to say like, oh, the hardest thing I had to do was, live in a thunderstorm, like build a shelter in a thunderstorm or something like that. But I mean, honestly, that initial step sounds a lot more difficult in my mind because it's like, man, what am I signing up for? Because it's not only because you can just say in that moment like, all right, this isn't for me, I'm bailing, boom, we're out of here, and you have no other difficulties, right? But if you stay, then you're signing yourself up for who knows however many hard things. So
Yeah. And
hmm.
I think part of it was I had no knowledge as to what was beforehand, like what was going to happen when I got into it. And like having no one there was really hard that I knew, especially the first few days. But I think once, honestly, to be perfectly honest, my pride is literally the only thing that held me there for the first few days.
Hmm.
Because you have to quit, you have to go stand in front of everyone and tell them that you're quitting. And
Oh.
so for the first few days, I did not want to be there, but the only thing that kept me there was I didn't want to go up and say that I was quitting.
Hmm. Man, that'd be terrifying. Like you have to be you have to be so sure about quitting too. Like be like, unless you're just one of those people who just does not care. They're like, yeah, no, I'm out of here. You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
Did anybody quit?
Um, throughout the year, yes, but not surprisingly. This is one of the first years, but not through ground school. Everyone stayed through ground school,
Oh wow.
but after it was also one of the hardest years, as in leaving wise, because after ground school we had like 10 people leave, and that's a lot for
Hmm.
vacation. So
Yeah.
that was really hard.
I didn't even ask how many people are in the program.
There was about 40 to start with,
Okay.
40 candidates.
And what you ended like with 20, 25, something like that?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Hmm. Man, that yeah, that does sound tough to start with. What about the scariest thing that happened? I don't know if that's the same thing. Um, and maybe I don't know. Maybe if it's like something you can't talk about, then that's cool too. But like, just what? Yeah.
Well, so this technically, there was a few times throughout the fusion process. So we're going to really hard. We're going to Kansas City and areas that aren't good. And one night we were doing evangelism and it got dark and it was just me. No, 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 that was a different time. Okay, so there's too many of these. Um, so there's one day that my co teammate and I, we were going to pick up this lady that we had been reading the Bible with, and we were going to take her. She didn't have a car. She was an older lady, and we were going to take her to the laundromat to
Hmm.
wash her clothes. We went there, and we brought her there. We were dressed up because we had an event to go to afterwards. Not like super, just like more than we usually do in Kansas City in the Northeast because it's
Yeah.
somewhat dangerous. And she takes us to the motel or the laundromat that's right next to. There's a big city. There's a big building in the Northeast that's known for being where all the drug lords are at and a bunch of bad stuff. She takes us literally the one right beside it, so we're already freaked out a little bit. And these two guys are like in there. First, we walk in and everyone is staring at us because obviously we're not supposed to be there. We don't look like we're supposed to be there. We're two college girls. Normally, we have guys with us when we do that stuff just for protection. But that time we didn't, and it turned out to be really bad because we had um, two people stalk us, which is kind of scary. We ended up leaving before we were supposed to because, yeah.
Hmm.
But I think that was probably, we had a few instances like that. We had in Chicago, someone pulled out a gun in the middle of the street in Little India. That was kind of scary.
Oh, nice.
I mean, we had a few of those because we were in the bad areas.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. The scary parts in trainings, I can't exactly
yeah, yeah, yeah.
talk about.
Well, I mean, I guess it's one thing where in the very back of your head in training, you at least know like, okay, this is like there's somebody over this like situation. Obviously, God is over all situations, right?
Yeah.
But like, there's this is like an organized thing going on right now, even
Yeah.
if it's terrifying. But then there's oh, there are some really not good people in the world. This is
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think Chicago was the hardest. It was really eye-opening to how depraved the world is.
Hmm.
And yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Um, a sidebar. I forgot to ask you earlier. You said you went to Little India in Chicago. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's to practice language. So you were learning Hindi. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was gonna maybe talk about this later, but we talk about it now. But that was because you were planning on going to India, correct?
Yes. Yeah. That
Okay,
was where we're supposed to go.
and that would have been all summer.
Yeah, I would have gotten back in the end of July.
Okay, gotcha. And then obviously, coronavirus blew up the world, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Hmm. That really stinks.
But Chicago was actually the first time that I'd ever. So we did evangelism a lot, but
Hmm.
as you know, I'm like a really timid person, and so I
Yeah.
usually we always went in twos, and so we would either go door to door or go just trying to make relationships and stuff. A lot of times I had never taken the lead on sharing the gospel and getting to know people, and Chicago was like, and I'd been praying about it a lot because I was really frustrated with just my inability to speak to people and how just fear of man got in the way of a lot. And then
Hmm.
Chicago was the first place that I ever was able to share the gospel with someone and actually like lead a conversation and talk to the lady. So it was really cool. I really liked Chicago.
Hmm. When you talk about sharing the gospel, what and you mentioned doing evangelism earlier, and so I mean you've already mentioned like having conversations with people. You mentioned like taking someone to the laundromat. What what does that exactly look like though? Like when you're sharing the gospel, is it door to door stuff or what's the dealio?
So it kind of changed a lot. There's a lot of different ways we did it. During ground school, we had to go do EV with our temporary teams. And that was kind of difficult for me just because our goal was during that was to go and tell people, get to know people, share the gospel, get them connected to a church or like get their phone numbers so that we could give to someone who could love on them and be able to better share the gospel. That one was a little bit harder for me. But once we got our permanent cohorts, we went to a specific apartment complex every single time. And we did a few door to doors for the first few weeks. And then we started like people who were interested in talking to us and just seemed open to, yeah, just being willing to talk to us. We would go back and we'd talk to them and start relationships and um, just begin, yeah, developing friendships. And then halfway through, we started a kids ministry with
Hmm.
the one of the boys teams that went to our church that we people in Kansas City are just willing to give their kids out to anyone, or well, where we were at, not everywhere. But so a lot of times we just go and be like, "Hey, your kids should come and hang out with us. Like we're gonna take them and play soccer." And we would play with them for a long time, and then share Bible stories with them. So that's what a lot of what it looked like.
Hmm.
And then yeah, just meeting people, and so there's a lot of different ways.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, like in general, there are,
Yeah,
but I was just
yeah,
curious what you guys were doing.
yeah.
Um, are you still connected with any of those people at all, or like the program is still connected with people you've met? I'm just curious.
Yes and no. So unfortunately, the area that we did evangelism at was really was a place where people don't stay very long just because it's a really bad area and a lot of the people that we worked with.
Mm,
So for example, we had a really good connection with this one lady, single mom of like 4 children. Her kids were extremely extremely naughty to say the
mm,
least. They were pretty young. This 10-year-old was getting in trouble with the police, and because of that they ended up getting evicted.
mm,
And um, we spent a bunch of time helping them move, helping them get on the bus with her kids who couldn't was kept trying to run away, honestly. So we were like helping her with that, and she left, and we never got to see her again. And then there was another instance where me and the one that was at the laundromat with us, she was really old and by herself, and so she ended up leaving also. A lot of the people that we were with left pretty quickly, and so we didn't get a lot of time, which really, really sucked and was really hard because we get pretty close with those people, and yeah, it was just hard, but
mm.
we got to love on them when we could and pray for them once they left.
Yeah, man, that is hard and that's weird because like I'm a very like people person, and so I'm like, yeah, in order to share the gospel, I really want to like try and build a relationship with someone and like be able to show them like in my relationship with them like what does it mean to be a follower of Christ. But there's the flip side of there are people out there who like just need help, and I guess it's cool to like still be willing to help serve someone in their need, like even if you won't ever be able to keep like a long relationship with them, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
um let's go a little bit the flip side, not quite as sad, I guess. It's not sad, it's just like real life, and real life is kind of hard sometimes.
Mhm.
um what about like a favorite memory? Was there like a I know you said the transportation training overall was a great experience, but like was there just like a single day or moment or something that was just like, man, that was awesome?
So I feel like there's a lot of those just because yeah, but I think figuring out my team was definitely one of them. And then I also remember a specific instance during transportation training where so my team and we're all extremely different, like complete
Mm.
opposites. Two of the girls actually did not like each other during ground school at all. So they were really upset about me. So that's kind of a part of it is learning to love people that are very opposite of you. And I ended
Huh.
up the beginning I was like, I love these girls, but like they're nice, but I have no idea how we're gonna get through this year. Ended up being like it went super well. I love them so much. But there's one specific instance we were in North Carolina, I believe, and we were supposed to get to a bus to go to Chicago. And we were gonna be late. We were like rushing on time, and we were like they were all like really mad. We were all arguing at each other. um, about what to do because we could have got a taxi, but we weren't technically supposed to. So some of the girls were like really upset about just like, hey, let's just get a taxi. We need to get there on time. There's a few that are saying, no, we need to do it right. We need to like use a bus or like some other sport of transportation to get to the bus. And we were all arguing. And then we decided our advocate, the leader, wanted to take the bus. So we ended up going with what she wanted because she was the leader. But we were all really frustrated. We hadn't had food in like a long time. So we ran to Jimmy John's and got food and we were sprinting. We were like towards the bus and we all just started laughing because we look homeless. We haven't showered in like 3 days. We have these huge backpacks on our back that are filled with stuff and like a blanket hanging off of the backpack. And we're sprinting towards this bus. We all just were like, after that, I feel like just we had been so upset with each other, and then everything, we just realized how pathetic we were and how pathetic we looked, and like just kind of had to forgive each other and move on. And then we ended up going to this gas station, and my advocate, after that, everything we did wrong, it just became funny. It wasn't even, no one even cared anymore. She knocked a rack over in this gas station with her huge backpack. So we were just laughing as she's trying to pick it up. And then we bought bread, like a whole loaf of bread, because we hadn't had food also when we were like saving it for the next day to
Hmm.
eat on the bus. And we couldn't find any jelly. So we go to the counter and there's these jelly packets, and we ask her if we can have some of them. And I think we definitely looked homeless because she goes, "Yeah, you can have some. Just a second, I'll be right back." She leaves, goes to the back, and brings out a whole box of jelly packets and dumps them all into a sack and gives them to us.
Oh no.
It was so funny. But I think, yeah, that was one of the highlights.
Huh.
All looking stupid, but laughing about it.
It was kind of that moment of where it sinks in just how absurd this all is, and yet you're like doing it with other people. So it's huh.
Yes.
That's honestly that's great. That's an awesome story. Was it kind of like from then on, like did you guys get along more in your team, or like not even just on the trip, or
Yeah, we were like we all have very big personalities. So we definitely had our arguments, but more often than not, they were more like we would fake fight with each other. More often than not, it wasn't actually
oh okay.
arguing just because we had so big. But there were times where it got, for the most part, we got along pretty well, and our team was like super. I loved our team. So
Gotcha. Who all not like who as in people, but like how many people are on a team, I guess.
so it depends on the team. Some people had
Or your team rather.
we were the biggest, I think, one of the biggest. There was 5 of us plus our intern. Our intern's like in the team, but not because she doesn't live with us and she doesn't do a lot of stuff with us, but she does. Intern is weird. I don't really fully understand their role, but and I'm gonna be one next year. But it was 5 major, and then yeah, our intern. So technically 6 of us.
Is it just 5 girls, or is it like guys and girls or something?
No, it's just 5 girls.
Okay,
That,
gotcha.
yeah. We have a brother team that was going to the same spot as us, but we really didn't like do a ton together.
Oh, I see. Okay. So your team is like your close unit, but then there's a little bit of connections with
Yeah, yeah,
other groups. Gotcha. Are you still like pretty well connected with them? I mean, like, are you do you still get to chat with people from your team, or
yeah, yeah. We've been. It's been a little bit less since the summer hit, but yeah,
yeah,
we've been staying in touch.
that's cool. Are you since you're going to be an intern next year, like do you get like assigned like a new team or whatever, or how does that work?
Yeah. So one of the advocates, she's an intern this year, and now she's an advocate. To
Okay.
and so she picked me to be her intern, so I'll be on her team next year.
Okay. So there's like a hierarchy where you have your candidates, and then your intern, and then your advocate. Is that
Yes. Yep.
okay? Gotcha. And that's it. That's like your group or whatever.
Yeah. And then technically outside of that, you have our op cord and our director and our administrative assistant, but
Okay.
they're kind of like the overall leaders of Fusion.
Gotcha. So it gets even bigger, beyond that. But
Yeah.
okay. Let's go one more. What do you think? I'm sure there are many answers to this, but what do you think the greatest lesson you learned from this crazy year was?
um, I think probably the biggest one, I learned a lot, but
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I saw a lot more of my sin this year, and like I've known all my life, like I've known I'm a sinner, but it just came out so much more clearly this year within like ground school when you're pressed in all areas and everything that you normally have is removed from you. I saw a lot more of my sin and like
Mm.
insecurity, just realizing the depths of my depravity and like how much I need the Lord, and like just gospel centrality. They push that a lot throughout Fusion. Is like um, every day, like waking up and reminding yourself of the gospel and reminding your teammates of the gospel. And even, I guess I always knew that, but at the same time, it wasn't as clear as it has been this year.
Hmm. So more of a I don't know, like a revealing stuff that you already knew but like didn't realize, just
Yeah.
the extremes of it all, kind of. Was it there's some saying, I don't remember what it is, something about like the oh shoot, I need to look this up because I there's some saying about like the more I see God, the more clearly I see my own sin, or something like that. I don't remember what the actual saying is.
Yeah.
Some famous person said it.
I think also, okay, so I'm gonna tell you the story, but you're gonna have to cut it.
Okay.
um, so during ground school, the so everything was gospel centered. Like everything that they did, in some way, shape, or form, was a picture of the gospel. And like they took,
Hmm.
it was all showing us how we can't do it ourselves. But there's one specific thing in ground school that literally changed my life forever.
Per Hallie's request, I did have to cut this story, just because of the privacy that Fusion wants to maintain in some areas. But it was indeed a very cool story. And who knows, maybe if you see her in person sometime, you can ask her yourself. But with that, let's keep going. Okay, so I was gonna say, so what's the road ahead look like for you? That's kind of where we're transitioning. Um, you already said, obviously, summer plans change because of Corona stuff. But beyond that, like, how are you planning on like continuing your training? Are you planning on going to this fusion thing for 4 years? Is it a 4 year program? I don't even know.
Three, technically.
3 year program. Okay. So are you planning on doing that all 3 years? Like basically just how are you going to keep training?
Hmm. Yeah, so I'm gonna be an intern next year after that. I mean, for the summer, I'm taking a missions practicum class, and they pretty much keep me accountable for sharing the gospel. So that's kind of good for this year. I don't want to fall into my old way of living, and it's really
Hmm.
easy, and I've already seen it happening a little bit. So,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, after intern year, to be perfectly honest, I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
um, yeah, I don't. I could be an advocate, but at this stage in my life, I don't think that I want to do that. I would like to finish an intercultural degree, like continue going to college and finish getting that. After that, I really don't know. It's kind of, I'm just kind of up to the Lord, really, because I don't really care where I go or what I'm doing. I just kind of, yeah, it's very vague. I have a very vague idea for my life, which is just living on mission somewhere, anywhere.
You got so long as you're serving the Lord, you don't care what you do, where you do it, or any of that jazz.
Pretty much.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some people have it, hard and fast. This is what I'm gonna do, and but I think it's more important to have like the purpose behind what you're doing. So I think I think you've got the right first step there. You just keep on going and see what happens.
Yes.
So my next question was gonna be like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I guess, but maybe you don't have a clue. like, are you? Do you still like? Would you like to go overseas at least for a time? Like, what? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely. So I'm still planning on next year going overseas for the summer. But
Okay.
after that, I don't know. I really like when I visited China last summer. I really
Mhm.
loved it, and I honestly could see myself there. But then Fusion has a very strong focus on Muslims and the um, yeah, just that area in the Middle East. And so because of that, I've also been like had a heart for that. But then like working inner city in Kansas City, I've been like I actually really like inner city, big city work too. So yeah,
I mean, you can do it wherever. So
exactly. But those are the three biggest places, like Middle East area or um, China or inner city.
I got you.
So it narrows it down a little bit, but not much.
I've always thought like okay, going overseas, I thought would be cool. Like even not even necessarily as just like a missionary, but just like
Hmm.
to like not as a career profession of like, oh, I'm here as a missionary, but more like a I want to live in this other country and like be a witness in the town that I live in kind of.
Yeah,
So like I mean it's still doing the same thing, but it's
exactly.
a little bit different way of I don't know going about it kind of.
Yeah.
Um yeah, I think the inner city though, that's the one that I think a lot of people who want to be missionaries like should look into it way more because a lot of times like when you're younger and stuff like you hear about missionaries who like went overseas and witnessed to all these tribes and had all this crazy I don't know like persecution or stuff like that like I know um I've read a few different missionary stories. Like I haven't actually read the what is it, the Jim Elliot one, the tip of the spear or something like that. Um but I have read In the Presence of My Enemies, which is by Gracia Burnham. And it's a story of how her and her husband were like missionaries in the Philippines, I think. And how they got like taken hostage by this one military group and then like her husband wound up dying in the end and like it's like an insane story and I think most people when they think of missions like that's instantly what their head jumps to which is like it's cool like there's a lot to be said for that but I don't know I just think there's also something to be said for seeing people like in your home state or country and like all these like homeless people in the street who like don't really have much and could really use a lot of hope and help and
Hmm.
like yeah I
Yeah.
think that's cool.
And I learned like this year, um, just with inner city, there's a lot of refugees here and people that like I was surprised how many people you can come across in America that have never ever heard the gospel.
Hmm.
And it was yeah, it was just eye opening to me this year.
Yeah, for sure. um if you could pick your top three countries to go to for I guess I don't know for just probably specifically for missions not maybe not
Yeah.
necessarily just a vision but what would be your top three?
Um, well, China would be one of them. Um, Probably India, just because I was supposed to go there and I've grown a lot more of a heart for it now. And I don't know. I think Nepal would be cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right next to India, right?
Hmm.
Okay, got you. Well, there you just connected all three countries, I think.
You know.
If my if my geography is serving me well. Gotcha. Let's kind of transition to the end here, I guess. What I think I have two different questions. So first off, what advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue the mission field?
Um, I think part of that's hard because I haven't actually been overseas, so I don't feel 100%
Yeah.
qualified to answer
Yeah.
that question. But I think just making sure, like, I know that my motives in the first place weren't right. That doesn't mean the Lord can't use it, but like just making sure you're prepared. And I don't know. I feel like I've heard lots of stories throughout. They've told lots of stories of people who go overseas with this idea of missions as like painting a school or doing helping with an orphanage, which isn't bad. But I also think that in from this year, I've learned that I think that missions is more um, planting churches and just like making sure your motives and like doing it right, because sometimes things like that can do more harm than good. I've heard a lot of stories of missionaries, people trying to go over there inexperienced and just, yeah, doing more harm than good. So just
Mhm.
mostly being prepared and getting advice from older people who have done it longer.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to 100% like check your motive and actually take the proper steps to prepare because yeah, I've also heard stories of like if you just try and wing it like going overseas, you don't have a clue what you're walking into like as far as social norms and stuff, and so what you think might be helpful is actually being super unhelpful and
Hmm.
all sorts of crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
Second question, because I think there's a lot of um, Christians out there who don't necessarily feel called to be like a missionary, but we're all kind of called to live on mission, I guess. Like our mission is to serve.
Hmm.
What advice would you give someone who wants to tell other people about the gospel, like in just their day to day life, to fulfill that, spread the good news all over the world, like yourself? I mean, you said you were pretty timid and is kind of like, I don't know how to bring this up or whatever. Like, what have you learned in that regard? I guess.
I think a lot of it's about just intentionality and being just like with where you go. Where so when we were in Kansas City, we would go to the same places, we'd go to the same coffee shops, try to like just make friends with, but just like seeing those opportunities and taking them. I guess it's hard to be like I've missed a lot of opportunities, but it's hard to like to just say to like how to do it or be braver or something, because the times that I actually have shared the gospel, it wasn't necessarily because if I wait too long I will miss the opportunity, so I just have to like trust that the Holy Spirit is gonna work through me and say the words that need to be said. And a lot of times the first few times that I did it were extremely rough, and I doubt if they got anything from what I said because it was bad. But I think it's just a lot about being intentional with where you go and like not just surrounding yourself by Christian people, because I know I did that a lot in high school, and
Hmm.
like not being around, just being intentional really.
That's it. That's interesting you brought that up because that's like one benefit I've found of going to like a public university is like, yes, there are Christian groups on campus. Yes, you will meet other Christians who are great people and great support. Um, but the majority of people on campus, either have never heard of the gospel, they've never really cared about it. Like they're just there to live their life.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you can still like build friendships with those kind of people and like the way you live is just super important. I've seen where people notice that you're different
Hmm.
just because everyone else on campus is, they're just there to live it up, I guess.
Yeah. I also think what helped me also is, okay, you should always be ready to like um share the gospel at any moment, but it helped
Hmm.
me a lot having set times and going with people with the specific purpose to share the gospel and get to know people. And so like we would have times sometimes when we didn't go door to door, didn't have anyone to talk to that day. One of my roommates and I would go to a coffee shop. Actually, it was a Somali coffee shop with the specific intention. We do homework, but we bring homework. But our goal was to meet someone and to be able to get their phone number, get like be able to talk to them more and share the gospel with them. So set times really helped me.
Yeah, I think that works too. It's kind of crazy because like there's a whole slew of like different ways you can share the gospel, and like
Hmm.
a lot of it depends on like your personality type and stuff, and just what you find most valuable and how you can connect with others more and stuff. And
Yeah.
in the end though, I think it just comes down to like, hey, like just take some initiative and do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You got any other like final thoughts or like a story you wanted to share, anything like that?
um, I can tell you probably the funniest story of all of ground school.
Okay, do I
I'll
have to
finish
cut
out with
this one?
something funny. No, you don't have to go this way. But this was, I'll just end on a funny note. But so
Okay.
we were living outside pretty much. And we were, we have guard duty. So I'm standing at my post, and one of the girls, she ended up being my teammate, was like a ways away.
Hmm.
And she, it was the middle of the night. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning, and like a bunch of people are sleeping in the tents. And she screams. She goes, "Possums!" Because there was possums running towards her apparently in the night. And I was half asleep standing, so I like woke up and was like, and the kid beside me, I don't, he was fairly close to me. I hear him go, "Just bark at it."
What?
She starts barking. She starts like at this possum, and then he goes, "No, like a bigger dog." She starts like doing this deep like ruh, ruh. Apparently they went away. Is what she said. I didn't see the possums, but it's just really funny. The best moment of all of ground school.
What? Oh
So,
man.
but yeah.
Well, and okay, so what? You were supposed to be on guard or something, and you're like half falling asleep, and
Yes.
then there's just all this random yelling and screaming, and you're like, what's
Let's
going on?
yes. Yes.
Nice, nice.
But yeah.
That's a great story, man. I'm sure you probably have like you could probably write a book just on your 1 year alone of all the crazy stories.
Yes. But it was good. I love fusion, and I would encourage anyone and everyone to do it that's a believer. So
Mhm. And to tough it out past
yes.
day 3 or whatever
Yes.
the hardest one was. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hallie, for doing this with me. For once, it did not go as long as I thought it might. I think that's a welcome change where not every podcast has to be 3 hours long. I've got a bad habit of doing that. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. So I'd love to hear some more stories some other time too.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
definitely.
Also, I hope I was able to figure out this audio a little bit because there'd just be random times where like I couldn't hear you, but I could tell you were still talking. So I would
Oh no.
try to like catch back up on the conversation of like, okay, I don't know how we got from here to here, but let's make it work.
Yes.
That's all right. I can try my editing out and make it all work.
Okay.
Yep, I guess that's it. I will talk to you some other time.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that was a very cool discussion. I wound up talking with Hallie even more after we recorded, so it was just really nice to catch up with her and sort of hear what all she's been up to over the past year or so. I did want to clarify something with the audio. I mentioned it kind of right at the end, but my headphones at random parts during the episode the audio would cut out on my end. Hallie was still talking, but like I couldn't hear her. Most of the times that I had an issue with it, I edited most of those out, but there may be some parts still in there that like I maybe ask a question that's somewhat repetitive or something, and it might be just because I didn't hear her, or maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. That's also a possibility. One thing that I thought was really interesting that I should probably clarify is we talked a lot in this episode about like how to share the gospel or how to train for missions and stuff like that, but we never really, I don't know if we ever really gave a concrete answer of like what is the gospel, kind of. And I know most of my audience right now are Christians, and so they kind of already know this. But for those of you who are not and are more interested in this subject, I figured I should clarify a little bit. The first thing I'd recommend that you do, if you want to know more about the subject of what is the gospel, is to read one of the gospel books, which would be like Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Those are at the start of the New Testament in the Bible. So it would be right around the second third of the Bibles where those are located. I would recommend probably reading the book of John. I think it's the most accessible. I personally really like the book of Matthew. But either of those are just really good explanations of like the story of Jesus and what like his mission is on earth. And then after reading one or both of those, I would recommend reading the book of Romans. It's just a couple books later. Romans is a really good book for describing like why the gospel matters, kind of. It's a little bit tougher, I would say, to understand if you're like relatively new to a lot of this. It's got a lot of rich theology in it, but I think with some careful study, you get a good picture of why all this Christianity stuff matters. So that's what I'd recommend doing. So like the 30-second, I don't know, or minute gospel summary. There is a God. God is perfect. He is holy. He is eternal. And mankind is born naturally sinful. So that means that we are in rebellion against God. We don't do the right that we should do. And the punishment for not doing the right that we should do is eternal like separation from God, which is the concept of hell. God, in his love for humanity, does not abandon us. He gives us hope in the form of Jesus Christ, who is God in the form of man. Jesus is sinless, so he is perfect because he's also God. And because he is perfect, when he dies on the cross, like it's kind of like a sacrifice for mankind. So all of the punishment of our sins is placed onto him. And then God, for his purpose and in his mercy, calls his children, so like followers of Christ or Christians, he calls them back to himself in order to save us from our sin. And we respond to that with faith and repentance, basically trusting that there is nothing we can do in ourselves to save ourselves from our sin, and that our only hope rests in the work that Jesus did on the cross for us. So because of what Jesus has done for us, we can have hope. When we die, we will be with God in heaven. So that's kind of the short and simple, but there's a whole lot more to what the gospel means for our lives and all sorts of different aspects, and how we ought to live as Christians. But hopefully that's helpful if you are unaware. Maybe it's more confusing. I don't know. That's why I think it's probably best to read some of this stuff for yourself, and if you can, try and find like a good pastor or a follower of Christ to kind of walk alongside you and help you understand what this all means, kind of, which can be difficult sometimes because there are certainly people out there who claim to be Christians who maybe don't actually have a great understanding of what it really means to be a Christian. But if that's something you really want to pursue, I trust that God can, get you the help you need. Anywho, that's that. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like. If you'd like to listen to stuff regularly, every Wednesday is when this goes out, and so please consider subscribing. Once again, I don't have a next time on Audio Stew for you because I haven't recorded what the next episode is yet. Once again, it'll be a surprise for us all. I have one discussion I really want to have with some people, but I don't know for sure whether it'll be out in time for the next episode. So I guess we'll see. And I've got a few I think are cool announcements coming in a couple weeks. So be on the lookout for probably the June update video. That's really all I got for you today. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.